We know this image. We've been trained to understand it. The determined jaw, the high-tech gear, the American soldier alone against a hostile world, framed like a hero from an ancient myth. The music swells, telling us how to feel. It tells us this is about courage. It tells us this is about sacrifice. It tells us this is about good versus evil. This image is one of the most powerful stories America tells about itself. It's a story of righteous power, of bringing order to chaos, of heroes fighting monsters in faraway lands. We see it in films that gross hundreds of millions of dollars. We feel it in our bones. It's clean, it's simple, and it's a lie. Not a lie in the sense that soldiers aren't brave, or that they don't face real danger, but a lie in what it leaves out. A lie of omission, so vast and so profound that it changes the shape of the truth itself. This story, the one we know so well, is a carefully manufactured product. It is a weapon designed to shape our memory, to sanitize violence and to justify the unimaginable. This is not a story about left versus right, or politician versus politician. It's about the system underneath. It's about how the stories we consume about war, especially the Iraq War, were not just entertainment. They were a form of psychological warfare aimed directly at us. The goal wasn't just to win on the battlefield, it was to win inside our minds. To understand this, we have to look past the heroic frame. We have to search for the faces that were deliberately blurred out, for the voices that were intentionally silenced. We have to talk about the ghosts of the people who lived there, and the ghosts of the stories that were buried in the sand. This is the story of how you build a myth, and what it costs to do so. Every hero needs a villain. It's the first rule of storytelling. For a character to be seen as purely good, the force they are fighting against must be seen as purely evil, or at the very least as less than human. A simple obstacle. In the cinematic language of the Iraq War, this rule is applied with surgical precision. Consider a film like American Sniper. It's a masterclass in perspective. We spend 2 hours inside the mind of Chris Kyle. We see his childhood, we feel his patriotism, we understand his love for his family and his brothers in arms. The film forces us to see the war through his scope. And when you are looking through that scope, everything on the other end becomes a target. A threat. It has to. For him to do his job, for the audience to root for him, the person on the other side cannot be a person. They cannot be a father, a son, a man defending his home from what he sees as a foreign invasion. They are simply the enemy. They are savages. This is not an accident. It is a narrative strategy. The late scholar Jack Shaheen spent his life documenting how Hollywood has consistently portrayed Arabs as cartoonish villains, sinister billionaires, or violent fanatics. For decades, they were the convenient, disposable bad guys. After September 11th and the invasion of Iraq, this existing stereotype was weaponized on an industrial scale. Watch these films closely. Notice how the camera treats American soldiers versus how it treats Iraqis. The Americans get close-ups. They have names, personalities, jokes. We hear about their lives back home. They are granted full, complex humanity. Now look at the Iraqis. They are often nameless, faceless. They move in crowds, shouting in a language that is never translated. They are part of the landscape, like the dust and the rubble. Their homes are not homes, they are enemy compounds. Their neighborhoods are not communities, they are insurgent strongholds. When an Iraqi character is given a moment of focus, it's almost always through the American gaze. They are the grateful informant who needs saving. They are the treacherous local who can't be trusted. They are the brutal enforcer who confirms our worst fears. Even when a film attempts to show a moment of shared humanity, a fleeting connection, it's filtered through the American protagonist's experience. It's their moment of growth, their lesson learned. The Iraqi character serves as a prop in the American story. Why is this so important? Because it goes beyond filmmaking. It's a process of manufacturing consent. When you watch a film that spends 2 hours humanizing one side and dehumanizing the other, you are being trained. You are being conditioned to accept the premise of the conflict itself. You leave the theater feeling that the violence, while tragic, was necessary. You feel that the occupation, while messy, was a noble effort. The film has done the political work that no politician's speech ever could. It has reached you on an emotional, subconscious level. The erasure of their humanity is not a side effect of the story. It is the entire point of the story. You cannot have a simple heroic narrative of a foreign occupation without first erasing the perspective of the occupied. You must turn a country into a backdrop. You must turn a people into shadows. Only then can your hero stand, bathed in golden light, looking noble, righteous, and justified. The myth demands it. In 2005, a ghost began to haunt the American military in Baghdad. A story was spreading through the city, whispered on street corners and broadcast on local television. It was a story that the official narrative could not contain. It was the story of a sniper. They called him Juba. To the American forces, he was a phantom, a deadly, invisible threat who seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. He didn't just target soldiers, he targeted their sense of security, their feeling of superiority. He operated with a terrifying professionalism. After each successful shot, a single empty casing would be left behind, along with a short note, often written in Arabic and English. A calling card, a message. While the American media was largely silent, Juba became a legend in the Arab world. Al Jazeera and other networks aired clips from videos he began to release. These were not the crude, shaky videos of typical insurgent propaganda. They were methodically edited. They showed his patience, his skill, and most importantly, they contained his voice. I have 9 bullets in this gun, and I have a gift for George Bush. I am going to kill 9 soldiers. I am doing this for the viewers to watch. God is great. God is great. The message was chillingly direct. He was speaking past the generals, past the politicians, and directly to the soldiers on the ground and the public back home. He was using the language of his enemy to deconstruct their myth. The American war machine was built on technological dominance, overwhelming force, and the idea of facing a primitive, disorganized foe. Juba, with his single rifle in his steady hand, was a direct contradiction to that story. He represented a form of resistance that was disciplined, skilled, and psychologically astute. He was, in military terms, a professional. And that was what made his story so dangerous to the occupation's narrative. It's easy to dismiss a suicide bomber as a crazed fanatic. It's much harder to dismiss a man who operates with the same cold precision as your own special forces. The American military tried to erase him. They publicly denied his existence, claiming he was a myth, a composite character created by insurgents to boost morale. They said it was just a series of disconnected attacks, not the work of one man. But on the ground, the soldiers knew better. They talked about him. They feared him. His name was scrawled on bathroom walls in their forward operating bases. He was the boogeyman who was all too real. In the film American Sniper, there is a rival enemy sniper named Mustafa. He is portrayed as a dark mirror to Chris Kyle, an Olympic-level athlete who becomes a deadly insurgent. This character is almost certainly a fictionalized composite, created by Hollywood to give the hero a worthy antagonist. It's a classic storytelling trope. But in creating their fictional villain, they erased the real one. They replaced the complex, politically charged reality of Juba with a simple, digestible movie monster. Mustafa, the film character, is evil because the script says he is. We are given no real reason for his fight. He is simply the bad guy. Juba, the real man, was something far more complicated. He was a symbol of an Iraq that was fighting back not with blind rage, but with calculated defiance. He was a product of the invasion itself. His story told a truth that the multi-billion-dollar propaganda machine could not afford to admit. That some of the people they were fighting were not terrorists. They were soldiers in a war for their own country, fighting with a skill that rivaled America's own. The number of people Juba is said to have killed varies wildly depending on the source, but the exact number is not the point. The point is the narrative he created. He was a story that wrote itself, a ghost in the machine of the occupation, and his very existence was a form of psychological warfare that was, in its own way, as effective as any bomb or bullet. He proved that no matter how much money you spend, no matter how many movies you make, you can never fully control the story. Sometimes the truth finds a way to take a shot. The erasure of Juba from American memory wasn't a coincidence. It was a strategic necessity. His story complicated the simple myth of good versus evil. And in the world of war propaganda, complication is a disease for which there is no cure. The suppression of a story like Juba's and the promotion of a story like American Snipers doesn't happen by accident. It isn't the result of a few biased filmmakers, it is the result of a system, a well-oiled machine that exists at the intersection of entertainment and military power, an architecture of control that has been built over decades. At the heart of this system is a simple transaction. Hollywood studios need things that only the US military has: aircraft carriers, fighter jets, tanks, helicopters, and thousands of active-duty soldiers to use as extras. Producing these things with special effects is incredibly expensive and often looks fake. Access to the real thing gives a film a level of authenticity and scale that is almost impossible to buy. The Pentagon is happy to provide this access, but it comes at a price. That price is control over the script. As documented in the film Theaters of War, for a filmmaker to get this production support, their script must be submitted to the Department of Defense for review. A special office at the Pentagon reads the script and decides if it aligns with the military's interests. Does it portray the military in a positive light? Does it honor the chain of command? Does it make American forces look effective, professional, and heroic? If the script has scenes of American war crimes, of soldiers questioning their mission, of military incompetence, or of enemy combatants who are portrayed sympathetically, the Pentagon can demand changes. If the filmmakers refuse, the support is withdrawn. No tanks, no helicopters, no aircraft carriers. This creates a massive structural incentive to tell pro-military stories. It's not a smoke-filled room conspiracy. It's a business relationship. A filmmaker who wants to make a blockbuster war movie has a choice. Make the movie the Pentagon wants you to make and get millions of dollars of production value for free. Or make the movie you want to make and struggle to find funding for a story that challenges the official narrative. Which choice do you think gets made more often? This is what the great scholar Edward Said meant when he wrote about culture and imperialism. He argued that the culture a powerful nation produces, its art, its literature, its films, is not just innocent entertainment. It is an expression of its power. It's the soft, friendly face of empire. These stories create a shared national identity, an emotional consensus that makes it easier to justify actions overseas. A film that shows American soldiers as flawless heroes isn't just a movie, it's a recruiting tool. It's a piece of public relations that reassures taxpayers that their money is being well spent. It's a balm for the national conscience. It helps us feel good about wars that are by their very nature brutal, chaotic, and morally gray. So when we watch these movies, we aren't just seeing a story. We are seeing the end product of a system of control. A system that filters out inconvenient truths and promotes a specific, sanitized version of reality. It ensures that the stories with the biggest budgets, the biggest stars, and the widest distribution are the ones that reinforce the myth. Meanwhile, the counter-narratives, the stories of the occupied, the stories of dissent, the stories of the ghosts like Juba, are starved of oxygen. They are relegated to low-budget documentaries, foreign news reports, and academic books. They are kept on the margins where they can't challenge the mainstream consensus. The system doesn't need to burn books when it can simply bury them. The myth of the heroic war requires a simple enemy, a unified evil force for the hero to vanquish. But the reality of an occupation is never that simple. An occupation is not just a war between two armies. It's a war on the social fabric of a nation. And one of its most effective weapons is not a bullet, but a dollar. Beneath the surface of the battles and the bombings, another quieter war was being fought in Iraq. It was a war of information, and its currency was betrayal. Human Rights Watch and other organizations have documented the widespread practice of using paid informants. The American military, desperate for intelligence on insurgent activities, poured millions of dollars into creating networks of local Iraqis who would report on their neighbors. Imagine the pressure. Your country is in ruins. The economy has collapsed. There are no jobs. Your family is hungry. And then a foreign soldier in an armored vehicle offers you hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars for a piece of information. Maybe it's the location of a weapons cache. Maybe it's the name of a man who has been seen planting roadside bombs. Maybe it's just the identity of someone who speaks out against the occupation. This tactic is as old as warfare itself. But in Iraq, it was deployed on an industrial scale. It turned communities against themselves. It sowed seeds of paranoia and distrust that poisoned relationships for generations. Who could you trust? The old friend you grew up with? The shopkeeper down the street? Your own cousin? Anyone could be an informant. This reality adds a tragic layer of complexity to the story of the resistance. It wasn't just a fight against a foreign army. It was a fight against the internal rot that the occupation itself had created. Many resistance cells were broken up not by military force, but by a single phone call from a paid informant. Many fighters were killed not in a firefight, but in their sleep, after a neighbor gave up their location for a handful of cash. Some sources speculate that this is ultimately what happened to the Baghdad sniper Juba, that for all his skill and caution he was eventually betrayed by one of his own. We may never know for sure, but his story, and the stories of countless others, are a stark reminder that the clean lines of the hero myth dissolve on contact with reality. In the movie's Betrayal is a dramatic plot point. In an occupation, it's a daily fact of life. It's a systemic tool used to break the will of a people. It's a wound that is inflicted not on the body, but on the soul of a society. This part of the story is rarely told in our films. It's too messy. It doesn't fit the narrative of liberation. It suggests that the occupation didn't just fight a war, it actively dismantled a culture from the inside out, turning friend against friend. And it complicates the role of the American soldier, recasting them not just as a fighter, but as an agent of this corrosive social breakdown. It's an ugly truth. And the hero myth was built to hide ugly truths. What happens when the fighting stops? What is left behind? Rubble, of course. Scars and memories. But whose memories survive? Whose version of the story gets passed down to the next generation? This is the final battlefield. The battle for memory. The stories we've been told about the Iraq War, the cinematic, heroic myths, are not just stories. They are now, for many, the reality. They are the memory. When a generation has learned about a war primarily through Hollywood films, those films become the historical record. The carefully framed images of heroic soldiers and shadowy, evil enemies cease to be propaganda and become something that feels like truth. The myth solidifies into history. The writer Naomi Klein, in her book The Shock Doctrine, describes a powerful political strategy. After a society experiences a major shock, a war, a terrorist attack, a natural disaster, it enters a period of disorientation and confusion. In this moment of collective trauma, it's possible for powerful interests to push through radical changes that the population would have never otherwise accepted. It's also possible to rewrite a nation's story. The invasion of Iraq was a shock on a global scale. In its aftermath, the narrative was up for grabs. The system we've discussed, the partnership between the military and the entertainment industry, went into overdrive. It produced a flood of cultural products designed to frame the legacy of the war. It told us it was a hard-fought but noble success, carried out by heroes against savages. It was a story designed to manage the trauma, not just for the soldiers who fought, but for the nation that sent them. It was a form of national therapy, built on a foundation of denial. The real tragedy is that this myth serves no one in the long run. It doesn't serve the American public, who remain ignorant of the true cost and consequences of the wars fought in their name. It certainly doesn't serve the Iraqi people whose suffering is erased and whose resistance is villainized, and in a strange and tragic way, it doesn't even serve the soldiers themselves. The heroic myth creates an impossible standard. It tells soldiers that their experience should be one of moral clarity, of righteous purpose. But the reality for many veterans is a chaotic mess of fear, boredom, and moral injury. They come home with stories that don't fit inside the clean frame of the Hollywood movie. They carry the weight of the ugly truths, the civilian casualties, the failures of command, the moments of cruelty, and the futility of it all. When they see the sanitized, glorious version of their war on screen, it can feel like a profound betrayal. It tells them that the country they fought for doesn't want to hear their real story. It only wants the myth. So we are left with two versions of the war. The one we paid to see in the theater, and the one that is buried in the minds of those who were there, and in the unmarked graves of those who were not. One is a memory. The other is the truth. This has never been about pointing a finger at an individual soldier. It is about understanding that soldiers are the first characters in a story that is written for them by others. They are handed a script just like we are. The difference is, They have to live it. We only have to watch it. The ultimate power belongs to the storyteller, the person who holds the camera, who edits the footage, who chooses what to show and, more importantly, what to hide. They dictate what gets remembered and what gets erased. This is the final frame, the selective truth we have been sold. The only defense we have is awareness. The only act of resistance is to ask a simple question when we are presented with one of these powerful moving stories. Who is missing? Whose voice am I not hearing? What exists just outside this perfect, heroic frame? The answer to that question is everything. It is the beginning of undoing the myth. It is the beginning of seeing the truth.